The rain was coming down in sharp, icy needles when the biker Jack Renlow pushed open the door of the small roadside cafe, shaking water from his leather jacket and carrying the weight of a day that had been far harsher than the storm outside, and just as he sat down at the only empty table, he felt a soft, hesitant presence approach, because there, trembling slightly from the cold and holding onto the handles of her wheelchair with quiet determination, was a young disabled girl named Emily Hart, and her voice quivered as she asked the simplest question that would change everything. Can I share this table? That moment hit like lightning, not because of her request, but because of the loneliness in her eyes, the kind Jack recognized too well, the kind that stays hidden until someone accidentally sees it. Before the story unfolds, if you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from, because stories like this connect hearts across every distance. Jack nodded slowly, trying to swallow the lump in his throat as Emily maneuvered herself into place with practiced struggle, her thin arms shaking as she lifted her bag onto the table, and as he watched her movements, he realized something was different about this girl. She moved as if the world had never once tried to make it easy for her, yet she carried herself with a quiet dignity, almost like she'd learned to grow flowers in the very soil where others tried to bury her. Jack, a man who had spent years building a reputation of being untouchable, unbreakable, even unapproachable, suddenly felt something inside him begin to crack, because sitting across from him was someone fighting battles he couldn't see, yet he could feel the heaviness radiating off her like a silent storm. As the smells of coffee and warm pastries drifted through the dimly lit cafe, Jack tried to focus on the menu, but Emily's trembling fingers caught his attention again. She kept trying to straighten a small, frayed notebook on the table, flipping through pages filled with messy handwriting, some words smudged as if tears had once fallen there, and Jack realized this girl wasn't just tired. She looked exhausted in the way only people who've been strong for too long look. He felt compelled to study her more closely, noticing the metal brace around her left leg, the faint bruising around her wrists like marks from physical therapy straps, the way she inhaled deeply before every movement as if gathering courage for tasks most people never even think about. Emily sensed him watching but didn't shrink away. Instead, she gave a small, brave smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and Jack felt something twist painfully in his chest. For the first few minutes they sat in silence, the storm outside beating against the windows, the lights flickering occasionally as thunder rolled overhead, but slowly, in the quiet between rain and breath, Jack sensed the truth. This girl wasn't simply resting at his table, she was escaping something, maybe someone, or maybe the weight of a life that kept breaking beneath her feet. Emily's story began to unravel in tiny moments. When she reached for her wallet and Jack saw the hospital band tucked inside, when she shifted and winced as though the chair itself held memories of pain, when she stared out the window with a longing that felt too old for someone her age. She wasn't looking for sympathy, she wasn't even looking for help. She was simply trying to exist in a world that had already taken too much from her. And Jack, who had spent years running from his own broken past, gang fights, a life on the edge, the guilt of losing a brother in a crash he never forgave himself for, realized with uncomfortable clarity that maybe he was sitting across from someone who understood the ache of carrying scars, even if hers were visible and his were buried. As the minutes passed, Jack noticed the way Emily gently traced the edge of her notebook, hesitating before turning each page, as though every word inside carried weight. And then, almost accidentally, he saw it. The pages were full of drawings, beautiful drawings, scenes of landscapes, people, moments captured with stunning gentleness, the kind of art that felt alive. But then his breath caught as he noticed something else. The drawings stopped abruptly halfway through the book, as if the story she'd been creating had been violently interrupted. Emily quickly closed the notebook, but Jack had already seen enough to know this girl wasn't ordinary. She was fighting to stay whole in a world that kept tearing pieces away. The cafe grew quieter, the storm easing into a soft drizzle, and the warmth in the room grew heavier with unspoken truths. Jack finally asked the question he'd been holding back, something simple, something human, and although Emily's answer wasn't spoken outright, it came through in the way her hands trembled and her eyes fell. She had recently lost someone who had been her anchor, her mentor, the person who taught her how to draw, how to see beauty through hardship, how to turn pain into art, and after their death, everything in her life had spiraled. She had been in and out of hospitals for her disability since childhood, but losing her last remaining family member left her without direction, without support, and without the one voice that had always told her she was capable of greatness despite the world's cruelty. Jack felt a rare sting of emotion, because he recognized that kind of loss, the kind that steals more than a person, it steals purpose. Emily confessed that she came to the cafe because it was where she used to sit with her mentor, sketching strangers and pretending life was kinder than it really was. Now she sat there alone, trying to feel something again, anything, even hope. As the story deepened in the space between them, Jack felt the walls he'd built start to crumble. He asked to see her drawings, and although she hesitated, she eventually opened the notebook, revealing not only landscapes and people but pages that seemed to bleed emotion, expressions filled with sorrow, hands reaching for something they couldn't grasp, shadows stretching across scenes that were once bright. Jack realized Emily wasn't just an artist, she was someone who poured her soul into each line, someone who fought pain with creativity, someone who turned her suffering into art that spoke louder than words ever could. And as he flipped through the pages, he discovered something truly unbelievable. Hidden in the margins of one drawing was a face he recognized. It was his brother. Not exactly, but hauntingly close, his expression, his jawline, the way his eyes carried a sadness that Jack had never been able to forget. Jack froze, the air thick around him. Emily watched him carefully, unsure if she had done something wrong, and then he asked, his voice raw, why she drew that face. Emily looked confused and said she didn't know the man at all. The face simply came to her one night when she couldn't sleep, when she felt someone watching over her, someone who looked sad but protective. Jack's hands began to shake. He had never believed in signs, in fate, in spiritual echoes, but this shook him down to his bones. It was as if the universe had led him here, angry biker, broken girl, one table, one unbelievable connection. They spent hours together, sharing pieces of their pasts, wounds they never intended to expose, but for the first time in a long time, both felt understood. Emily told him she was trying to get into an art rehabilitation program that could help her adapt her drawing techniques to her disability and build a future she once believed in, but she couldn't afford the fees. Jack listened in silence, thinking about his own life, the reckless choices, the guilt he carried, the endless nights in bars trying to outrun memories, and something shifted inside him. Without telling her, he made a decision. He excused himself, walked outside into the cold air, and made a call to an old friend who owed him a life-changing favor. He arranged for the program fees to be paid anonymously. When he returned to the cafe, Emily was sketching again, her expression softer, lighter, as though something inside her had eased simply by being heard. She didn't know what Jack had done, and he didn't intend to tell her, not now, maybe not ever, because kindness meant more when done without expectation. All he wanted was to see her believe in herself again. As the hours passed and the cafe began to close, Emily thanked Jack for letting her share the table, saying she hadn't spoken to anyone that openly in months. Jack felt something warm bloom in his chest, a feeling he thought he'd lost forever, and when Emily left, rolling slowly into the night, he sat there alone for a long time, staring at the notebook she had accidentally left behind. Inside was one final drawing, a half-finished portrait of herself, reaching out toward a shadowed figure who looked uncannily like him. Underneath it she had written a trembling line, "Maybe someday someone will see me." Jack closed the notebook, overwhelmed, because he knew then that he already did see her, clearly, painfully, beautifully. The next morning, Emily received an email saying her fees had been fully covered, and she would be starting the program in 2 weeks. She burst into tears, overwhelmed by the miracle she couldn't explain. Jack never claimed credit, but he showed up at the cafe again that same afternoon, hoping to find her. When she arrived and saw him waiting, she smiled, really smiled, for the first time since he'd met her. And in that smile, Jack felt the heavy shadows inside him finally begin to lift. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like the video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel so more people can experience moments like this. And before we end, please leave a special comment below telling us what part of the story made you feel the most, because your words truly matter here. In the weeks that followed, Jack and Emily continued meeting at the cafe, sometimes talking, sometimes simply existing quietly together, both of them